Good morning. Can you hear me all right in the back? Okay. Welcome. My name is Laura Kroger. I'm the Research Operations Program Manager for the Office of Research Innovation, and we want to welcome you to the 2023 New Faculty Research Orientation. Thank you for being here, and I know we might have a couple people online, so thank you for joining us online. I just wanted to share a couple logistics for today's event. If you've never been in the Hunt Library, the bathrooms are located directly across the hall in this yellow alcove out the door, so you'll want to go out straight out these doors, and ahead of you you'll see a big yellow space. We have boxed lunches available for lunch today for those in person, and we're hoping that you can take those and grab those on your way out. We're going to provide handheld walkable snacks for you to grab if you're getting a little hungry during today's networking session. So we're hoping to break for networking around 11:15, 11:30, and there will be some walkable snacks, so know that those are there. But yes, please take your lunch with you on your way out. And then many of the resources mentioned during today's program, they'll be posted on our research orientation webpage, hopefully early next week. And the webpage can easily be found by typing in go.ncsu.edu/research-orientation. It's also noted up here on the bottom left of the screen. And it will be shared with you following once resources are uploaded. We'll make sure you get an email noting that those are posted online. So to get us started today, without further ado, I want to introduce the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Dr. Mladen Vuk. He's with us today to kick off our orientation with a special welcome address and an update on the current state of research. We will leave some time at the end of his presentation for open Q&A, so save your questions, but we'd love to have an open conversation there. And at this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Vuk to take the stage and begin today's program.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mladen Vuk, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to have the opportunity to welcome you also to not only to NC State, but to this event. I would like to do today two things. I would like to give you an overview of the research and then do a brief introduction of the people that are involved in research administration, so you would know who to go to to ask for help if you need to. In this slide, the background, for instance, is something that we do every year. We have an image contest, research image or visualization contest, and this happens to be work of one of the graduate students. It's actually a picture of the lining in the cans for food, detailed one. If you happen to be in the food business, you know what I'm talking about. So I want to start out by saying that NC State is a world-class operation when it comes to everything, but research especially. And we do not have a medical school. We only have a very good, in fact, top-of-the-line vet school. But we produce about $583 million in expenditures every year, $500 million. And faculty send out, and other researchers send out about $1.5 billion worth of proposals. And it varies from year to year. So, and then what we receive back is actually that number, both of these numbers, the expenditures and what we received back, are record highs. We received $409 million in sponsored research awards. And each award is usually maybe 3 years. It could be shorter, it could be longer. We also have a world-class commercialization unit, the unit that takes the research that is produced by faculty and other researchers, and then translates that into products, into patents, licenses, and so on. And that is very important both for the economy of the state and the economy of the country. And we are very, very good at it, actually. We are usually ranked in top 10 or so for schools that do not have medical school, because medical schools provide an additional advantage to in funding. Now, in the last year, we we launched 18 startups, but this is roughly the number that happens every year. So if you do have interest in being an inventor, this is the place to come to. This is an eye chart. I don't know if you can read everything that's out there, but it shows you the growth of our research expenditures over the last 10 plus to 12 years, or 13 years, and it's really been steady, going up. We really didn't have major blips. And the bottom chart shows you federal funding, the blue one, shows you industrial funding, the red one. The green one is institutional funding, which is really the funding that NC State directly or indirectly puts into research. And the yellow one is state support. That's not an appropriation. This is the money that comes through contracts with state agencies to look at the roads, to look at something else. Education, for instance, is a big winner in that space. And if you look at these numbers, the red looks small, but actually it's about 55 to 70 million. And it really does put us on the chart with respect to our peers and other universities. So, and this whole thing reflects in our rankings and reflects in our reputation. And I'm very pleased that you're here because I'm hoping that you will be adding, and in fact I know that you'll be adding to both reputationally and in terms of finances to NC State. If you look at the growth, in fact, what we have is an interesting thing between FY 10 and 10 years up, 19, we grew, our federal expenditures grew 65%. That's fairly unique. It's not something that happens at every university. So, and that's all thanks to really the work, the hard work of the faculty, the students, and the support that the research administration in this university provides, and the university as such provides to faculty who are writing grants and receiving grants and operating grants. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. So, by the way, if somebody is interested, what comes with every grant is not just the direct costs of the work you would do, students and equipment and travel and similar things, summer support, for instance. There's also something that's called overhead or F&A, facilities and administration money that actually provides for the additional support that you need, keeps the lights on, provides facilities where you actually can do work, and actually make sure that we are compliant with federal and other regulations. And that F&A is currently 52%. So that's when you have a grant, let's say you have a $150,000 grant, 100,000 is roughly your direct costs, and about 50,000, a little bit more, is indirect costs, the cost of doing business, basically. And you'll be hearing about that all the time. So our rankings reflect what we do. We are, for instance, top 10 when it comes to research expenditures among universities without medical schools. We are also top 10 when it comes to public schools without medical schools. We are third nationwide in expenditures provided by USDA. And all of the information that I'm talking about is something that's coming out of what we call HERTZ surveys, which is higher education, research and development survey that National Science Foundation does and collects the information every year about. We are 14th, for instance, in Department of Energy expenditures among all universities. And we are in the top 10 to 20 range in terms of funding from industrial sources or business sources. And in fact, among the public schools without medical school, we are 6th. Among all the public schools, and this is the number 21, the rankings come out about a year and a half late because they collect them by February and then it takes them about a year to process it. And we have continuously been in top 10 nationwide in terms of research commercialization. So a lot of things to look forward to. If you want to delve into that a little bit deeper, you can see that our federal expenditures, which do actually make up the largest part of our expenditures, are quite diversified across different agencies. But there is something there. Department of Energy, Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Defense actually have much larger research budgets than some of the other agencies. In fact, probably 6 to 8 times larger than National Science Foundation. And so it would be really good to have a much larger slice of our funding come from those two agencies. And this is one of our strategic objectives to actually be able to do that. If you look at the little square, oops, which way to go? Squares here. In terms of USDA money, as I said, we are number 3 nationally, expenditures. When you compare us with our peers, and I'll show you who our peers are, there's 12 universities that are considered officially our peers. We are 7th among the peers and 26th nationally in terms of NSF. And we are not doing that well in terms of DoD, and this is what, although we are doing really well in terms of what the money we get, we would still like to have more, and we are 48th right now. Department of Energy, we are doing well. Health and Human Services, because we do not have a medical school, that is a disadvantage. But when you compare us to our peers, most of which, by the way, have medical schools, we're doing quite well. So, and if you actually look at our growth in NIH funding, basically, but there are other agencies within that, it's quite impressive. It has grown, it has doubled in the last 10 plus years. And you can learn more about that. Dr. Horowitz, who is here, has sent me this particular graph. And it does reflect what we have done and what we do. Some of this is that we actually do have links to the medical school. We have a joint Department of Biomedical Engineering with Chapel Hill, and we have quite close ties with some of the institutes there and some of the centers there to work together on a number of proposals. Same applies to Duke, actually. So if you are interested in the biomedical engineering, medical engineering, things that are related to that, then we do have the mechanisms to get us linked in with the 2 really good medical schools in the area, and it does give us an advantage as a university. This is the rank. This is the peer set. The numbers are from 2020 because NSF stopped reporting some of these numbers of the faculty counts, and they're supposed to come from somewhere else. I haven't had time to update this, but the rankings haven't changed very much. But our peers are, for instance, Georgia Tech, Maryland, Wisconsin, Texas A&M, California Davis, Arizona, Florida, Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois, Michigan State, and Virginia Tech. And in terms of Number of researchers, we're actually the smallest amongst, or close to the smallest among these. And in terms of research expenditures, we are actually close to the smallest. What we do much better, I think, than they do, is we actually punch above our weight because per faculty member, we bring in more funds. And I must say that I'm very pleased that you are here because you're adding to the number of faculty that we have. The number is close to 1,400, maybe 1,500 at most, depends how you count things. And it hasn't changed very much over the years because people leave and people arrive. Now, we do have now entities which are called academies. We had something 10 years ago which was called clusters. In other words, the provost's office and the chancellor would hire people in clusters that may be located in one place, but really come from 2 or 3 colleges and work together on the problems, interdisciplinary problems. And these groups did very well. They actually made a difference in our ability to get high-value grants and high-value operations and high-value centers. Now the entities that are called academies are intended to lower the barriers that potentially exist among the colleges and units and allow much more collaboration. And so we expect that in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll reflect very much on our ability to move ahead and be continue to be the leading university in our area. If you're interested in what we do, these are sort of areas, if you like, strategic research areas that were developed in collaboration with all the colleges and centers a few years back, and Dr. Genevieve Garland, that's sitting up here front, can tell you more about it if you're interested what falls into these things. What's given there are just examples of what this covers. So if you happen to be interested in AI, today AI isn't just about every box, right? It's not like it's anything else. But you can also, we have a section or direction which is worried about data and decision making, and then suddenly AI is there as well. Food, water, and energy solutions are a big thing for NC State, right? NC State has a large plant sciences operation, agriculture operation, engineering operation, and clean water is very important. I'll say a few words about that. If you are interested in social sciences and humanities and education, then you can certainly find a lot of opportunities to collaborate with colleagues and do very interesting things, as we do. And we have some really big successes in that space, and I'll mention that. And then one of the things that we worry about because we live on the coast is coastal resilience, for instance. Do the waters and how far the waters of the sea come up? And with that come a lot of other resilience things we should be thinking about. Biological resilience of the livestock, for instance, security, resilience to potential cyber attacks, and so on. And what you see listed here are some of the centers that exist either in making or already operational. So one of the centers is called SCI, which is Secure Computing Institute, for instance. Another one below that is ICONS in making, which is about sensors of any kind, biological sensors and physical sensors. ITRI is, for instance, about transportation. ASSIST is an NSF engineering research center, also focused on sensors. Strive has to do with, and I'll mention that in a minute, Strive has to do with epidemiology, and so on. You have a number of these activities that you can join, you can collaborate with, and a lot of them are, in fact, almost all of them are very interdisciplinary, and they have to be today because it's really hard to do really advanced work without being interdisciplinary. Let me give you a few examples of recent successes. So one, for instance, is a center called STEPS, which is focused on phosphorus. It's a Science and Technology Center, a National Science Foundation center that's very prestigious. It's really led by two people who are in different colleges. One is in College of Engineering and one is in College of Ag and Life Sciences. And it's about making sure that phosphorus, which we do need for life, all the plants need to grow, and the phosphorus is not readily renewable. You have to mine it and use it in the fertilizer. And it also leaches away easily. And when it does that, and when it hits the water, hits the seas, then there can be an algae bloom, for instance, and that's not usually good. And they are looking into the way of reusing and focusing the phosphorus into the areas where it has to be. And if you haven't done that, you may want to drive around a little bit and go to Lake Wheeler, farm area that we have, which is about 2,000 acres. Centennial campus is about 1,000 and something acres, 1,200 acres. And then vet school is about another 300, 400 acres. But the Lake Wheeler operation is where we have farms and grow things and have cows. They actually make ice cream over there, which is really good. If you haven't had Howling Cow ice cream, you should certainly do that. We also produce beer, but that's a different group on the main campus. So this kind of research is very important, and it's getting a lot of national attention. Another area where we are very good is, for instance, artificial intelligence. Dr. Lester has just received recently NSF funding for Artificial Intelligence Institute that's focused on advanced human learning and education. And of course, all of you know, I'm sure, about ChatGPT, which will write papers for you, grade your homeworks that your students write. It'll also help the students write, so it's very interesting how that will work. And generally, a lot of hype around it. If you ask me, most of the AI is actually just a collection of if then else statements, if you happen to be programming, and one should be really very cautious, both in using and in putting a lot of belief into them. But nevertheless, AI can do really wonderful things, and we have and this is just one example of what we can do really, really well. And Dr. Lester is a world known in that space. But we have other things that are really also one of our fortes. EdSchool is one of the best, I think, in the country. And example of that is the Belk Center, which really works on developing community college leaders and advancing equity and economic mobility in North Carolina. And it's run by Dr. Audrey Jagger. She's here in the corner. And it's a wonderful example of how we actually give back to the state of North Carolina. We are a land-grant university, and one of our major mission elements is actually reaching out to all 100 counties that we have in the state and making sure that they can profit and use the latest in technologies. Used to be only ag activities, because North Carolina, to a large extent, is an ag state still. But there's also other technologies that are going there. And so there are outreach programs like this in engineering and in textiles, and obviously in the College of Ag and Life Sciences. And Friday Institute, which is part of the College of Education and in General College of Education, has outreach almost everywhere because we produce very talented teachers that, of course, K-12 needs very badly. So that's another area where one can collaborate. And they, by the way, have really good technical staff. So thank you, College of Ed. Another interesting entity that we have is called Center for Health and Human Services, which is supported by NIH grant, NIHS grant actually, but and has a number of members. People join those centers. And one is Dr. Catherine Hoyo, who has, out of College of Sciences, who has recently received a $17 million grant to study links between contaminants, something that's called forever chemicals that they use to produce Teflon and all sorts of other things. And there are a couple of plants in North Carolina, and some of that stuff has been leaking into the rivers and into the water supply and potential into people. And they are studying not just those, but the contamination that may impact liver cancer and similar things in the South. And this is a very important, very IRB intensive. I don't know how many of you know what IRB is, but IRB is essentially institutional review board that checks that when you work with living beings, you sort of don't make mistakes that would lose their personal information or something else. And when you have human subjects, you have to actually apply for a permit to do that. And in fact, when you go later on next door, you will see that we have a lot of services out there that are available to you, both centrally and in your colleges, and IRB is one of them. There are many other services, and you'll see what they are. Another prominent entity among, by the way, 40-plus centers that Dr. Horowitz sits at the end there is overseeing is the Center for Comparative Medicine Institute that is technically housed in the School of Vet Medicine, and Dr. Jorge Pedrojeta is one of the co-directors. And the center or the institute has received relatively recently 2 NIH training grants, which is a very important way of helping transfer knowledge about research, about leadership, and so on. And Josh Pierce here on the side is out of the chemistry department in the College of Sciences, and he is, and you will hear about that because in your lifetime over here that's going to happen. There is a new building coming up, which is called Integrative Sciences Building, that is on the main campus. It looks wonderful, and he is in charge of helping to set up the science around it and what will be in the building. And, but he is also a member of the CMI. Dr. Cheng, he is an expert in comparative molecular medicine and does really well and is very well known. And Jorge is a co-director and also in that space. If you take a walk from this library and you go up the hill, You will see on the right-hand side towards the end of the road will be a new building. That's the Plant Sciences building. That is the focal point, but not all the faculty are there. They are scattered around other places. And this building is a global hub for essentially advancing plant sciences. Just about everybody needs plants, from animals, humans. You don't get meat without plants. So if plants go wrong, everything goes wrong. And the focus of this effort, which is really well recognized, is being led by Dr. Adrian Percy. He had 30 years or so in industry, and he's joined us. We are very lucky that he has, to help us lead this plant sciences initiative. But there are some wonderful researchers there who have world recognized reputation. And it's worth your while to go there and take a look and walk around, because they actually have greenhouses on top of the building. A really nice place. If you happen to be into animals, we also have the animal care service, or for you to be able to work with animals. But we also have lizards. Well, I have them in my office, but not because I invited them. They just come in. But this happens to be a Galapagos lava lizard, and Dr. Horowitz went there the other day to commune with them. But the lizards are only part of the Galapagos. We have an agreement with Chapel Hill that has an outpost there. And if you happen to be interested in the animals, and particularly collaboration, this is a fantastic opportunity to do some interdisciplinary research and see the world. So if you would like to get involved in this, please do contact Dr. John Horowitz. Charles Darwin is not available right now, so, but we can do. There's many other areas. I'm not, I could spend 2 days just going through them. All of the 10 colleges that we have wonderful research programs that definitely are worth mentioning, world-class research. As I mentioned, there are these academies and centers and institutes. We had, ASSIST is still operational, it's in its last year, but Freedom was a renewable energies research center, engineering research center. We have this STC now, and nuclear energy is one of the big things for us. We have a really good team, top in the country in terms of nuclear engineering. We have a lot of contacts with national labs. If you haven't worked with national labs, you should certainly try and do that and contact Dr. Allison Wilson, and they work in a range of specializations. We also on campus have Laboratory for Analytic Sciences that works with government agencies. And in Asheville, North Carolina, we have a center for climate research that is led by Dr. Brown. So we have a quantum hub, which is and we are looking at expanding that, which is interested in the latest computational technologies. If you are interested in quantum stuff, we would love to have you work with us, because algorithms and everything else is being developed. Manufacturing is a big deal for us. We have, for instance, a really big nonwovens operation attached to textiles, and it has pilot machinery that's also worth seeing. And And Dr. Portahimi, who is director of it, will be happy to show you around if you show interest. Decarbonization of agriculture is a big deal, and there is a whole research group that works, or at least is talking to the Oak Ridge National Labs about that. Coastal resilience is part of the whole thing. There's something that's called Carbon Electronics Cluster, which looks at electronics that could be produced from biological entities. And research automation is a big deal, and there are many, many other things. Certainly, design school has started doing some really interesting things in community engagement. And we have a lot, something that's called CNR, or Natural Resources, College of Natural Resources, that deals with forests and other natural resources in North Carolina, also really interesting space. So, what are we? Office of Research and Innovation is a central collection of administrators in facilities that helps provide common services to NC State researchers. I'm the Vice Chancellor in charge of that, and I report directly to the Chancellor. And technically reporting, and then we have a collection of centers that report directly to us. And then there are other centers that may report to the deans and the provost's office, or even the chancellor, that Dr. Horowitz keeps an eye on with respect to annual reports, operations, compliance, and so on. We have a research operations and communications unit that helps us produce narratives for research and wins and other things, and you will see people involved in that in a second. And then we have a sponsored programs unit, the one that you're going to be quite familiar with that unit, because your research activities all have to be registered centrally before your proposal goes out, and certainly once it comes back, somebody has to make sure we don't cross the lines where the federal government will not allow us to cross, or state government when it matters. And we'll also keep an eye on your funding. We have integrated services unit, which essentially you will have similar things in your colleges, but we act as a college for the units like centers and so on that don't belong to a particular college. The research commercialization unit, I already mentioned that. They are top of the line, top in the United States, in the world, I would say. And they can certainly, if you have leanings towards innovation in terms of startups and so on, they can be of great help. And then we have a unit that's focused on national security and special research initiatives. That unit worries about national labs, worries about nuclear, worries about similar things. So let me look at the two things that happen. We are central unit, but each college and potentially department will have R&D pre and post award administration. And there is someone in each of these colleges that's called Associate Dean for Research. And Associate Deans for Research are people who can help you with research questions. They are very much domain knowledgeable, which means your space, and know exactly what's going on in the colleges. And they are part of a council, that the Research Operations Council, that advises me on things that have to do with colleges and dean's view of the world. There are other advisory committees, by the way, that we have. One is the University Research Council, which is faculty. And then there's the Research Operations, RSC, Research Support Council, which is your administrators, at least representatives from your administrators. We also have other organizations on campus that are helping move things ahead, particularly in the interdisciplinary space. And those organizations sometimes belong to the Provost's office, sometimes belong to some other offices. One that's across all the units in the university are entrepreneurship activities that can lead to, of course, students producing intellectual property that NC State owns, and then turning that into products, licenses, IP, and so on. So let me go through the units that we have here and just introduce some of the folks. Dr. Genevieve Garland, she's sitting up front. Yeah, she's waving a hand. She worries about interdisciplinary research, strategic initiatives. So if you want to know something about strategic plan or that we have, or you want to worry, or want to ask something about the strategic areas of interest for NC State, she can help you with that. Marketing, education and training, human resources. Dr. Ginger Burks, Drogon, I'm not sure if I pronounce your name correctly every time, but sorry about that. She just joined us. I'm being trained. She just joined us, and she runs our financial services and research administration. And she's very knowledgeable. She has worked for other parts of NC State, and we're very lucky to have her join us. That's Dr. Horowitz up here. Maybe he can wave his hand so everybody, thank you, sir, so everybody can see him. He's the guy that sends you notices of, or his staff at least, about funding opportunities. He manages internal funding and also manages research infrastructure, core facilities. We have 6 core facilities that have in them things like microscopes, spectrometers, and similar things. And he keeps an eye on centers and institutes. And reporting to him is a proposal development unit, which can really be helpful if you go for large proposals, because they will help you manage the bureaucracy around large proposals. They'll also help you manage or construct the budgets. And while they will not write the content, because you have to do that, they'll help you edit it and put it together and get your CVs and everybody else's CVs. So, and they're really successful. And the proposal development unit at NC State is operated by Pradeep, he's executive director, and you definitely want him to be your friend when it comes to proposals, large proposals. Dr. Allison Wilson is National Security and Special Research Initiatives Vice Chancellor, Associate Vice Chancellor, and she worries about defense initiatives, analytics, mostly related to national security, and national laboratory initiatives and some other things. That's a very interdisciplinary unit, and so if you have an interest in that, and I think there's opportunity for just about everybody to participate. Sherry Settle, Associate Vice Chancellor for what we call SPARCS, I apologize. She runs the sponsored programs and reg compliance, and I think today you will see here representatives from both the sponsored programs and reg compliance, and she is the one that actually keeps an eye on the pre-proposal and post-proposal operations, particularly when it comes to negotiations with things like companies. They can be difficult sometimes. So that's the unit you want to work with. Marisa here runs sponsored programs, covers proposal submissions and outgoing subawards and negotiations when they come back, hopefully to be accepted. Mary, she's somewhere there. There she is. She worries about research integrity, conflict of interest, human subjects, animal care and use. If you are going to get to work on some Defense Department grants, you will definitely want to get in touch with her because you may need some help with all the regulations and restrictions and abilities. Justo Torres is the director of a unit that's called Contracts and Grants. It really doesn't report to us, to ORI. It reports to the Office of Finance and Administration, but those are the guys that keep an eye on your grant numbers and making sure that you don't overspend, underspend, and that we are compliant in that space. Wade is the head of the Research Commercialization Unit, and he worries about, currently primarily worries about investment into startups and something that's called Chancellor Innovation Fund, which is a early stage seed funding for startups and entrepreneurship training and similar things. And his executive director, Dr. Chauhan, actually worries about, has a whole group that worries about inventions, intellectual property, confidentiality agreements, if you have to do those. His people will take care of it, patents and so on. In general, we are trying very hard to keep NC State world class, which we are. We're trying to keep ahead of the curve, and we are expanding portfolio cautiously where it's necessary. And if you have interests, you should definitely come to talk to us, because if you're trying to do something really very novel that we haven't got on our books, we would like to know about it. So at this point in time, I think I'm going to stop and ask you questions. If you have anything I can help with.
Question? Okay, well, Mladen will be leaving, and we are going to have a networking session later, so if you think of something, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, please do that. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mladen, for a great overview of research and innovation. And next, I'd like to invite our panelists up for the How to Find and Acquire Funding panel, as well as our moderator. So as those individuals are finding their seats, I want to introduce you to today's moderator, Dr. Genevieve Garland. She's the Associate Vice Chancellor for Research Operations and Communications and the Chief of Staff for Research and Innovation. I'm going to let Genevieve take the floor here with her name. Doesn't work.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us in person today. I don't know how many in-person things you're doing for these sort of meetings, but we thought this was really important to give you opportunity to talk to some people in research today. So thank you for coming and taking the time. We're hoping that this is one of our most sought-after panels, I'll just say. We've done this a couple times with new faculty and junior faculty. And so what we're going to talk about today are funding opportunities and hopefully how to be successful in getting that funding. And then we're providing you a wide range of perspectives for that. So from individual faculty to college representation to central office support as well. So I want to go ahead and kick that off by having each of them introduce themselves. And so we'll start on the end, if that's okay, with Yara, please.
Hi, I am Kobe Steele, Distinguished Professor of Material Science and Engineering. I've been here since 2007. Since I had to put my package together recently, I apparently raised $99 million since 2007. And it sounds really big, but it's a lot of center grants, so don't think that way. But in general, my group has 9 students, a research professor, and 2 postdocs, and it's all supported by federal grants. I have different grants from foundations to industry, to defense, to DOE, NIH, and my favorite is NSF. It's just, I'm biased because it gives you most freedom and least reporting, right? So that's why I always try to score NSF grants first before going anywhere else. That's it.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Megan Kerr. I'm the Director of Research Administration in the College of Sciences. There I oversee a team of pre- and post-award folks who help people like Yara apply for and receive funding, and then once they have it, help them manage it according to the guidelines, working with a variety of sponsors, private, federal, state. So good morning. It's great to see all of you here. Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm John Horowitz. I'm a professor of cancer biology in the College of Veterinary Medicine, but my real day job is I serve as Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, and you heard a lot about the kinds of things that I'm involved in from Dr. Bowman.
Good morning, I'm Karen Hollebrands. I am a professor of mathematics education in the College of Education and also the Associate Dean for Research and Innovation in the college.
Keisha Demps. I'm currently the interim director of partnerships here at NC State, and the role of our office is to serve as a conduit between industry and all of you to help promote all the funding opportunities, both for you and then opportunities for our students as well.
Great. So we obviously have questions for our panel, but I also want to take questions from you. So we'll go back and forth. And if you have questions throughout the discussion, please just raise your hand. This is meant to be informal and casual. It's a chance to ask all of these people those burning questions that you have. But I'll start just by asking the panel to maybe just give some advice based on your position within your unit or from your personal perspective for faculty when it comes to looking for funding opportunities. Sure. Anyone?
I'll start.
Go.
Okay, so apply to as many agencies as you can. Always apply, always write grants, always have new ideas. Put the deadlines for all of the grants on your calendar. Give yourself whatever it takes you. For example, I think about idea and read a lot before I actually sit down and binge write it. So I need like 4 days for binge writing at the end. That's why I'm a troublemaker, and a lot of people know that. Because I might not be ready for the grant until the last moment. Not that I'm thinking about it, but I know myself well, right? So I'm not a collaborative writer. I usually write it all myself at the end, right? So just a bad habit, but it works. And then it looks more clean because one person wrote it. It's up to you how you write it. Participate in as many collaborative grants as you can too, because it's fun and it's less writing overall, and it's new opportunities. Always apply to NSF. A lot of programs now have 1 project per year. Every year, make sure you submit it there, even if you got funded the previous year. If they allow you to send it next year, do this again. NSF is a competitive grant, but in general, it's a very fair review process. There is no renewals there, though. So you get the grant, you're done, you move on. Make sure that you always try to talk then to the program officers, such as at DOD. That's you need to talk to the program officers. DOE, Department of Energy, you also need to talk to the program officers. They have to invite you to submit. First, you write a white paper, you send them a white paper. Maybe it's going to be a call maybe not. They will say, okay, go ahead and send me your 15 to 25-page proposal, unlimited, and then you're going to start writing. Sometimes it's very short. So let's say I just happened to me at DOE. I talked to my program officer in January. No, the second thing was 1st of February. And she said, okay, great, go ahead and submit the proposal by March 10th. Right, so 25 pages. So that happens, right? So these things are, but at least you get a chance. With the industry, we have, again, some of the companies here, like Eastman Chemical, that send RFP, always attend, always try to submit to. There is foundation grants that call it. And of course, if you go to the networking, to the conferences, advertise yourself as like, oh, we can do some work for industry. And if they agree on it, some of this is actually might not go through our contracts and grants. I had 50-50 chance because of, conflict of interest, because of intellectual property issues. So keep in mind an industrial grant will take a little bit longer time because you first have to sign the NDA, then you have to agree on your properties, and this might take you at least 6 months to a year to start that. But the industrial grants sometimes are 2 pagers. That's all.
Yara, since you transitioned us, actually, I'm going to take a lead off of the industrial grant and maybe ask from the college perspective, but start with Keisha on giving faculty some advice for, one, how to go about looking for industry funding, and then maybe like first time working with a company versus maybe traditional federal funded, which I think Yara was just explaining a little bit about.
So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity with industry funding. It won't necessarily always come by research. When we were actually had this conversation yesterday, a lot of companies think that because they are doing work with the university, it's research and development. And it could be a gift, it could be some testing or fabrication services. In the company's head, they're working with the university, it's research. So we have roughly, if you're not familiar with campus, 72 companies that have a physical location here, and another roughly 120 companies that we work with that don't have that physical presence, but they all want to tap into the resources that we have here on campus, meaning your research. So one thing that we've done to, the easiest would be to reach out to us, right? If there's a company that you have an interest in that you haven't worked with already, we'd be happy to just sit in with you on a conversation, just to be there to listen to the company. That's really how a lot of the relationships start. They're obviously there, they've contacted you for the research that you're doing, but there may be other opportunities that they're not aware of that they can plug into that will also benefit you as well as your students. They fund studio projects for your classes. So again, not research, but in their head it's research because there's some type of deliverable being done. Another way would be, again, just for us to provide additional resources to them. So there's multidisciplinary projects that may occur. So based on what we're hearing from the company, we may need to pair you with another faculty, perhaps, that's outside of your college. So there's opportunities there to engage as well. One thing I wanted to highlight as far as, there's a bunch I could highlight, but I'll just touch on one other thing right now. We created a partnership portal. Have any of you seen that or are aware of it right now? Okay, good, you can sign up for it. The partnership portal is an opportunity for us to share industry needs throughout the colleges. In the past, we were going to a lot of the faculty, quite frankly, that we go to all the time. But we recognize that there's a whole wealth of other faculty that are working on similar research initiatives or that we just weren't aware of. And we are able to post opportunity from a company. It's all password protected, so you would log in with your Unity ID, and you're able to see that request and respond to us directly. And then we create an opportunity for you to meet directly with the company and discuss their need, but also your research. And so that's probably the easiest way that we just sent, I think we've had 3 postings just in the last 10 days or so. and those change every month. So if you have not, I think most of you hadn't heard of that, you can either sign up directly, or the posts do go out to the research officers as well, that will generally distribute those throughout the colleges.
Yeah, Megan or Karen, anything you want to add to?
I just want to add to both Yara and to Keisha's comments and say, while it's great for the faculty to wait till the last minute to write their technical proposals, it is helpful for the research offices if you let us know when you start and put them on your calendar. So even if it may not come to fruition, if you're like, oh, I'm going to go for this NIH cycle deadline, but you push it out another 6 months, that's fine. We'd rather have a placeholder on our calendars and anticipate something and work with you so we can prep a lot of those documents that you might spend less time on for you and have those ready in advance so you can have your binge writing time towards the end and we don't interfere with that. Another thing I would say is to lean into the people in your department. A lot of times they're really well connected to industry partners or to federal sponsors, and just talking and getting to know people, these natural type of connections come up. My ADR, Heather, is really good at kind of connecting people, so I'll kind of let Karen take it from there, but just communicate early and often with your research offices.
Yeah, I agree. It's better for us to know in advance that you're anticipating to submit a proposal and maybe it doesn't happen, rather than letting us know very last minute. Often there's documents that need to be reviewed. We need to make sure they're compliant. And systems sometimes fail. So if you're planning to submit on that deadline and there's a glitch with the system, we would hate for it not to get submitted. So earlier is better, for sure. So I want to talk a little bit about how do you even find these funding opportunities to prepare a proposal for. And so I have a few strategies I suggest to our faculty. One is, signing up for various listservs. The National Science Foundation has all sorts of listservs. They send out emails, it seems like daily, maybe more than once a day, about various opportunities that are coming up. So that's one source where you can look. The PDU sends out a regular newsletter, and they are chock full of funding opportunities as well. We subscribe to something called InfoEdSpin. How many people have used InfoEdSpin? That's a huge database, right? So you got to be pretty selective with your keywords, but you can generate a whole list of various funding opportunities through that database. So InfoEdSpin is a great source. And then, as Megan mentioned, talking to your colleagues, where are they finding success with funding, not only within your department, but within your professional organizations. So for people who are doing work in your area, when I read their articles, I, of course, look at the abstract and the findings, but I also look at the acknowledgments. Like, who are they acknowledging in that published research article about who's funding their research? And might they be interested in also funding the work that I'm doing? So looking at articles, looking at your peers, talking to your colleagues, and talk to your Associate Dean for Research. That's part of our job, is to help you find funding for your research, connect you with others who might be interested in collaborating, and connecting you to resources. So those are my suggestions.
Can I just add one quick thing? I just want to say also your status. So if you have an early stage investigator status, there might be opportunities that are more geared for you and that you have a higher success rate with.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add one thing to what Karen mentioned as far as your publishing. Companies are looking at those, if it's a simple article, it's something in a journal, they reach out to us all the time. I just read this article on new polymers for water bottles, whatever. We'd like to meet with this faculty. And so there's two options. One, continue to publish as much as possible, but also if there's something new that you are looking for additional funding for, you want to advance what you're working on, let us know. We don't know what we don't know either. And so the more knowledge that we can have on what you're working on, we are happy to share those opportunities with companies. We've actually found more value in working that way with a company to share, hey, I send these all the time. Hey, I thought you might be interested in this. Absolutely, yes, we'd like to meet with that faculty member. And so don't hesitate, even if it's something small, to share those opportunities with us.
Great. John, sorry, John, you shocked? You didn't get to talk? No. We heard a little bit in Mladen's talk about Research Development Office. One thing that your office does, of course, is our internal funding. I think that would be a great thing for faculty to hear about, because a lot of those are targeted specifically at faculty early in their career. And so sharing that, and then some other resources RDO has as well. But then Karen, you may also talk about other colleges also have some internal funding or support funding they do. So maybe that's something you can talk about, John.
Sure. You know, to apply for extramural research funding, often you have to provide a lot of preliminary data to support the idea that you're worthy of funding, right? Well, the university offers a number of internal seed funding programs that can help you get started, can help you generate the preliminary data that you need to be successful extramurally. And so we have 4 programs within the Research Development Office. In general, we run them every single year. And we announce them, and so you'll have every opportunity to apply. They're competitive, but they're a great resource to get started, to kickstart new projects, especially interdisciplinary research projects, where you might be working with people in a different college or a different department, and you need their expertise to succeed. In addition, as Dr. Volk mentioned, we have 41 centers and institutes at NC State. About 10 of them have their own internal seed funding programs as well. And so if you are affiliated with one of those centers and institutes, if you're a member, you might have access to those funds as well. Moreover, there are at least another 4 interinstitutional seed funding programs that NC State has with Duke or Chapel Hill, and you can get involved in those and access those resources as well. So there are a lot of potential sources for seed funding that are available to you. So to ensure that you are up to speed, that you know what's available, please subscribe to our listserv. I'll be in the next room, as will some members of my team. We're happy to help you get signed up if you're not already signed up. And that'll really be important to get you started.
Karen, I don't know if you want to.
I think, so of course, what internal seed opportunities are available depends on the budget year to year. So this year, some of the support we're providing to faculty include additional travel funds. We know some funds are provided maybe by your department. That might cover 1 or 2 conferences, but we really want you out there networking, sharing your research, and so we had extra travel funds available. We have support for open access publishing fees. We know that your work will have more impact if it can be more easily found and cited. So that's some support that we provide. We used to provide support for travel to visit a program officer, but now with Zoom, most of those visits, which we highly encourage, are happening through Zoom or through the phone. But if you're interested in going to see a funder or meet with a program officer, talk to your college associate dean and see if there's funds to help support that travel. So those were some of the opportunities. We also have the FRPD program, which is jointly sponsored by the university as well as the college. They both provide support for that program, and that's been very helpful to our faculty.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, Karen's representing the College of Education, but the message there is to reach out to your associate dean for research and see what kind of programs your college is offering when it comes to seed funding or matching other seed funding opportunities at the university, because each college looks a little bit different in terms of their offerings. I'm going to take a quick pause just to see, because we've been going for a few minutes, if anyone from the audience has any questions. Yes. And we don't have microphones, so I'm going to repeat your question for anyone online.
So do we always go first to our internal college research team rather than go directly to you guys if we have a proposal?
Yeah, the question is, when submitting or when planning to submit a proposal, do you start at the college first? Yeah.
I will say for the partnerships office, that's completely up to you. We have plenty of faculty that reach directly out to us with the need. And one thing that we haven't touched on, when you may have a grant that you are proposing and you need support from industry. A lot of grants are requiring some type of industry support as well. So those are other opportunities that you can definitely reach out directly to us, and there may be a handful of companies that will contact that it may be relevant to, but we'll reach out on your behalf and then same thing, connect you with them. So.
I would say from my perspective, it's always good to start with the research office, and then they can kind of be an air traffic controller and help connect you with who you might need to. They might suggest that you put in a submission for the PDU support, or they might say, hey, have you talked to the IRB office, or we'll help get you where you need to go. But it's a really good place to start. In our office, we also have a developer who will work with you and kind of talk to you about maybe your 5-year plan, or different things that you're looking at applying for, and can help you kind of make a roadmap. So that's been a really helpful resource too.
My experience in College of Engineering, you start the PIN record.
Yeah.
That's how you start, right? And you approve it, and then someone will contact you once you do that.
You say you started PINS record?
Yes.
Yes.
PINS record.
Everyone's familiar with PINS?
PINS.
Yes. Okay.
That's how you start.
That's a signal to your college research
That's
office.
across the board.
It's the fastest way.
Yes. Okay, any more questions from the audience? Yes. Yeah, so the question is looking for reviewers who have previously submitted for a similar grant or have been served as a scientific, committee reviewer. I want to add to that too, because I think it's appropriate, because this is where I thought you were going, looking for collaborators too. So maybe we can answer kind of both, at your institution, especially as you're new. We don't have a database, I'll tell you that answer.
NIH grant first, right? So how do you see who is in your study panel? It's a public information. If you know which program you're submitting in, the study panel is published. So you can go there and see who is from NC State. There usually is, substantial amount of NC State, Duke, or UNC people. Duke and UNC also very close, or NC State. I have a lot of collaborations with UNC and Duke because it's only like really 20 to 30 minutes drive, and there is actually Starbucks that like right in this triangle type of thing where we all can meet, right? In the Sheraton Hotel too, the same thing with a lobby with a Starbucks. So there's the issues that you can solve it this way. So I would not contact these people that will be on your study panel to pre-review your grant, because that would be a conflict of interest, right? So generally, I would assume in your department, someone already wrote an NIH grant. How do you find it? If you go to Radar and CSU, you can see who had an NIH grant. And maybe you can see, even if you dig a little bit deeper, which study they submitted it to. That's I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure you can see who submitted to an NIH grant, right, recently. And then you can contact these people and ask them if you want them to just to review your grant. That's what you're thinking about it, right? I can tell you from my experience, people generally don't want to share their previous proposals because very often the ideas are still not published, and it's not an easy thing to like just go ahead and send your proposal to someone to see it, right? But most of us has some kind of proposals that's been a long time, but still okay, and they were winning, and they're funded, that we would share. Right? So generally, you can always send an email. Maybe you have a 30% probability of success to actually getting a sample of the grant back, if that's what you're asking, right? I couldn't hear your question very well, so I'm guessing. With collaborators, what I usually do, if I see the need, that's something that I cannot address in this proposal that I'm thinking, I'm lacking the expertise, I'm going to search just in the Google NCSU this expertise, and it will bring me some papers or some websites of people that I can read about and see if I interested of contacting people in that specific capacity, inviting them to my grant. Usually it should happen at least 6 weeks before the submission so the person can fully participate in the idea development. We're all busy, and it happens to be that, that my next available meeting is 2 weeks from now, for example, right? So it's most of the people like this, because it's right now it's a semester plus grant proposal running. It's like it's a terrible time until May for everybody in general. So that's how I would approach. If you're saying within a year, you have plenty of time to start a collaborative, some preliminary study, proof of concept. So for NIH, if it's your first grant, you should go for R21. If you don't have much of a preliminary study, if you do, you go for R01. And then generally, I would recommend you go for R01 anyways, because the competition is the same, just the money is different.
And I'll just add on the collaborators piece, if you are looking for other faculty collaborators on a grant or for industry funding, that's also an excellent opportunity to utilize the portal. We've done that before as well, just for you to identify other peers that are that have that other piece, maybe that of expertise that you don't necessarily have already.
Yeah, and I would add Radar, right? Radar.
No, that's the partnership portal.
Oh, partnership.
And I would suggest talking to your associate dean as well. We talk to each other, and so if there's a collaborative need in another college, if I'm not familiar with somebody, I can reach out to my counterpart, and they probably do. So always, just touching base with your associate dean, and I'm sure they're there to help you.
And one last resource I'll mention, we have something here at NC State called the Research Leadership Academy. And so it's a rather large group of very prestigious faculty at the university that have decades of experience in almost every field you can imagine. And so you can just go right online, look up the RLA, you can see who from your college or who from your department is a member of the academy. Give them a buzz, talk to them, tell them about the project that you're interested in doing, where you're planning on sending, what agency you're planning on sending the proposal to. See what they say. They might say, why don't you talk to these people? Why don't you get some advice from them?
Thank you. Yeah,
Research Leadership Academy.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. Thank you, John. And Yara happens to be a member of the Research Leadership Academy.
One of these people you can talk to.
Absolutely. And there's a list of them on the Research Innovation website of committees. And Milana mentioned another one, John, I think is a good source too, is the University Research Council. He mentioned earlier there's 2 representatives from every college on that, and they meet monthly as well. So I think both of those resources, in addition to the Associate Deans for Research, all great individuals for you to reach out to. One addition, we talked about internal collaborators. What about external collaborators on these proposals? Because of course that's very important too when you're writing your proposals. Any advice on that? I think you started earlier, Karen, talking about going out and making sure you're part of your external groups, but.
Yeah, I think again, connecting with your professional organizations and knowing who's doing work in your area. Most people will welcome an email just if you're interested in collaborating with them. But yeah, I think that's staying connected with your own professional organization is one way to find those external collaborators. Again, you can talk to your associate dean for research. If you're looking for someone who's external that might do the evaluation component of your project, they may already have a list of these are some great evaluation organizations that have worked well on other proposals. So I think it also depends on the nature of the external partner that you're looking for.
Regionally speaking, this is a very target-rich environment. So it turns out that each of the institutions, Duke, Chapel Hill, NC State, Central, A&T, Research Triangle International, all have essentially liaisons that know what's going on their individual campus. And if you contact me, for example, I serve for NC State, so I can connect you with various liaisons on the other campuses and hopefully find you the collaborators that you're looking for, if you're looking for somebody in the general vicinity.
And I was just going to say, as you're thinking through your proposals and thinking about the different roles that people might have, if your collaborator is going to have a more official role. You're going to want to work with your college research office for that as well, and their college research office or their research office, to make sure if they're going to be a subcontractor, a collaborator, key personnel, the different documents are gathered with enough lead time that it's not a headache for anyone. So just something to think about when you're working with the collaborators, to build in that time in your timeline and your proposal, because you won't be writing all by yourself, right? You might have to have other people in there with you, and just think about that when you're setting up that proposal.
I'll add to assistant professors, if you're looking for collaborations, what you should do, you go to the meetings, you see people presenting, offer your help to their projects first. Start the collaboration by saying, hey, I can help you with this, I have this expertise. But the most important thing for collaborations, actually successful collaborations, not just writing a grant, yes or no, funding is rate right now, what's about realistic 12%, but 33 according to the books, but it's including supplements, so it is much smaller than that. So if you're looking for collaborations, the long-term collaboration happens when you have the same intensity. What I mean by this, like, you have to see how you're working with this person. So initially it might not be a funded collaboration. I call it out of the goodness of my heart collaborations, because I'm investing time and resources, but it's not necessarily funded, right? So it might end up in publication, you might stop. It might even die out before that. Why? Because everybody has different philosophy of how to run the group and what collaboration means for you. So that's actually important discussion when you start collaboration, to make sure that you discuss, I do this, what about, based on my mistakes, by the way, what about publications? We do this together, what about the funding, right? I can tell you, when I was assistant professor, about 3 professors from NC State used me for intellectual property and never put me on the paper or on the grant proposal. Okay, that happens all the time. So I learned my lesson now. Before I do something like this, I say, okay, let's agree on what means authorship on publication, what means collaborative proposal in general, right? And I do this for anybody who comes to me, because it should be transparent. And intensity is important. How often do you want to meet? How much do you drive your students crazy? How much this person drives their student crazy, right? It's all important, because you don't want to have start collaboration person, okay, I'll come back to you, and then they're gone for 3 months, right? And you don't even know what's going on. And they might come back to you and say, oh, we solved your problem, but you might already think, okay, it's gone, right? So I'm gonna do it myself and find someone else. So it's important to discuss all of this before you start writing the grant, actually. Because once you link into the grant, it might be a really, really difficult project to pull together, and maybe one person pulling, but 2 people getting paid. That's also happened to me before, so based on experience.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? I want to make sure we probably have time for 1 or 2 questions. I just want to make sure we give you your chance if you have them. No? Okay. John, I was going to ask you to maybe talk a little bit. I know PDU is probably a little bit further out potentially career-wise, but a little bit more about PDU and potentially for people to be on the lookout for what PDU does, but also some training opportunities that come out of RDO. And then I think also anyone else, because I know the colleges as well as partnerships and other groups partner to put on workshops and seminars, and so just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So you heard from Dr. Volk, we have a unit called the Proposal Development Unit. This is a group of a little bit less than a dozen professionals that all they do every single day is help people think about ideas, help them form teams, help them develop themes for their proposal that should be competitive, and also help them write. So these are professional proposal developers. Now they don't work on every single grant from the university. You know, probably each year they help faculty submit on the order of $500 million worth of proposals, on the order of 80 or 90 a year. And so they are a bit selective. There is a floor for what level of proposal they're willing to work on. It has to be at least $1 million total. Their average proposal that they help is something on the order of $7 million, something like that total. So if you're ever involved in a proposal of that size, whether as lead or as collaborator, you should consider accessing their help. They're quite successful, and I can't recommend them enough. In addition to all of that, they run a lot of workshops throughout the year. There's one coming up, I believe, the NSF Career Workshop, that is extremely popular, and many of the attendees each year end up winning those awards, so I highly recommend that you think about that, perhaps for the next cycle for next year. But there are other workshops throughout the year on all different topics, like how to find collaborators, how to write your specific aims page. It's endless. And so again, sign up for our listserv. You'll get that kind of information in your email inbox. The PDU has their own website. You can peruse that. It has tons of information on all kinds of topics, including some for which you've already asked questions. So it's really a rich resource.
I'll just add that my ADR puts out a newsletter every week, so that is chock full of training opportunities. She tries to highlight a lot of the things the PDU are doing. Our proposal developer, Ann Jung, works with the PDU a lot and co-presents in a lot of these trainings, so we really try to build community that way. We do offer some like post-award 101 basic trainings and things within our college as well, and I think all the colleges offer that kind of training, or how to use pins and radar, those type of basics. So lots of opportunities out there.
Yeah, we also have a weekly funding bulletin that goes out with funding opportunities within the College of Education. We have a monthly research cafe with topics that we address that are proposed by our research committee. And we have an annual research celebration with the idea of bringing people together to talk about research. So lots of events and opportunities to support research.
I'll just add, we've mentioned Research Leadership Academy a couple times. One of the major things they do is they put on events throughout the year, and so they'll have lunch and learns or seminars around different topics, and so when you see things coming out from them, often they are meant for early faculty development, or there'll be research topics, and so those are great events to come to as well. Sometimes they're how to communicate your research, so it's a wide range of topics, and so that's another great opportunity for you to look out for. All right. Any last minute questions before we wrap up? Okay, well, I want to thank our panel today for your time. I'm going to ask Dr. Vogt to come back up and say a few words. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you. So, first of all, thank you for being at NC State and for coming here today. I do want to take the opportunity to thank Laura and Daniela, who is outside, and Genevieve and Vicky, who isn't here today, for organizing this event. So, I do want to tell you a couple of things that have to do with going after the money. One good thing to have as a professor is to have some discretionary funding. And usually you can get that through gifts. But gifts are very sensitive how you get them. You have to, if there is an opportunity, you should get in touch with whoever does your financials to talk to them, because you cannot have any strings attached. You cannot really have any deliverables. And companies will very often want to give you money as a gift because they don't want to pay overhead. But if they tell you that you have to report things in this and that way or deliver this particular thing, then that can be a problem, and you will not be able to get that money. So that's one thing to do. There are a couple other things. We have in the Office of Partnerships and External Relations a representative that for federal affairs, and that's Mr. Peterson over there. So if you really want to go to Washington to talk, which you should, you really do want to tell him first so he can help you, because he knows everybody, including all of our delegation there. The other part is that you will often hear, well, we're close to downtown, I'll go downtown and talk to legislatures, maybe I can get some money. Don't, okay? It's a big no-no. We have, again, in the Office of External Relations and Partnerships, people who do go talk to legislators, and we have to do it through them. So any one of those things, you have to be careful. If you're going to go after a gift or if you want to talk to someone else, please first ask the relevant office and they will help you with that. So again, thank you very much. We will now go, I think, to the next session. Oh, Laura is going to tell us where we're going. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so we are coming to what is our last item on the agenda today, but I've already had to tell the group over there that's getting rowdy to be quiet a couple of times, so they are ready for us, and I think everyone's going to very much enjoy this next section. So next up we have our Faculty Connections networking tables. In the final section, we're going to get up out of our seats, and it's a chance to meet many of the units that make up research and innovation, as well as partners across our campus. So in this section adjacent here, there's going to be networking tables with representatives from those units, and I'm asking that you please take some time to walk through the tables, network with as many representatives as possible. Many of these tables have provided you with some takeaway items or visuals and or online resources that will be posted in the webpage later. As an extra incentive, I know that this is kooky, but we've been pretty quiet sitting in our seats the whole time. So as an extra incentive for some of you as the new faculty, we've provided you with a new faculty research orientation bingo card. There are a couple on the tables out there. There's a couple cocktail tables and sitting tables. I also have a couple more that I'll kind of try to grab you as you go through the partition over there. Grab a card and a pen if you're interested in doing this. We ask that you write down an answer. So each of them are prompts or a question that you may have to walk through the room and go to different tables to find the answers to. Once you've filled 5 spaces in a row, so it can be across, down, or diagonal, either way, please shout out bingo, okay, if you have never played bingo before. But we do have special, oops, and all of your receipts. So we do have special prizes for the first 3 bingo completer or winners. So we all know your new faculty to NC State. You need some swag, right? So slightly competitive if you'd want to get into that, and it's not a requirement, but definitely a great way to find your way around the room. So I mentioned earlier, we've provided some handheld snacks. There's a couple of things on trays out there. If you're getting a little pickish, you can grab that, and there are still drinks and coffee available. You'll see a bunch of boxed lunches. Make sure you take one on your way out, right? Want to make sure you don't go away hungry. And yeah, if you have questions, just don't hesitate to ask anybody. You know, ask someone at the table. The representatives over there, they're here to help you. And this is a great opportunity and advantage for you to meet so many people across the university in one place and that you don't normally see together. Does anybody have any questions before we push next door? No? Okay. But if you do, you can find me or any member of the Research and Innovation team. And yeah, let's go on, get up, get settled, get some drinks and a snack, and start meeting new people. Oh, I'll mention the tables. There's a screen in there as well. This gives you a little guide to the tables. You have, well, I have to add one. We have 15 tables that you'll be able to meet. Add one. Here we go.